And continuing our look at some of the small arms in use by Special Operations Executive during the Second World War, we've got a number of small arms that we're going to cover today that we can't really devote one entire video to, but we can talk about individually. So what you're looking at here is a Colt Woodsman in .22 long rifle. And if you remember Eric Norman from the Welgun and Norm gun fame earlier, you'll remember his name again now. So from a quote from the book we used as a research point earlier, Norman is probably the person who modified a .22 caliber American Woodsman pistol to operate as a machine pistol. Their rate of fire was said to have been so rapid that the magazine was exhausted too quickly. So you can tell they made this automatic .22 caliber pistol and modified a Colt Woodsman, but to what ends, we don't really know. Maybe it didn't work very well. It was probably more of a science project than an actual operational requirement. You can tell he extended the slide back almost 5 inches from where it starts on the original Colt Woodsman, moved the rear sight up to the front of the pistol, and used a sort of lever very similar to the operating system on the Norm gun, which essentially with the lever, if you press it down with your thumb, it operates the handgun on fully automatic by allowing the slide to continually cycle forwards and backwards instead of catching it at the rearmost position. If you use it without the lever, then the slide is caught back every single time and is locked back for a semi-automatic operation. It being very lightweight and a .22 caliber cartridge, I think we can agree with the fact that it would run out of ammunition extremely quickly and probably not be very accurate at any sort of range other than maybe 5 or 10 meters away from a target. Plus it kind of looks like the Bochart handgun with the slide sticking past the thumb on most of the designs of this. The next design iteration we have is extremely bizarre compared to the rest of what we have, and essentially it's an FN handgun stuck on a belt, on a British web belt, and made so a right-handed shooter can wear this thing on his right hip underneath a coat or something. And it has a sort of solenoid trigger that goes up to your finger, and that is led through your sleeve or your coat pocket or anything, and is designed to be fired by the operator as the belt is worn. Essentially, what SOE was trying to accomplish here is how does SOE protect agents when compromised on the ground? Maybe a guy parachutes into Fortress Europe, German soldier or somebody tries to confront him, he has his hands up. How does he get out of that position alive and with a somewhat credible way of surviving? So with this kind of belt, the idea was that he could have his hands in the air and empty an entire magazine into a German sentry or enemy while trying to run away at the same time. At least this would give him some sort of a diversion to get the other guy's head down. It was never actually used operationally, although it was made in 1942. From what we know, 11 were asked to be made, and this is one of the surviving versions from World War II. Ian Skennerton claims that around 20 or so were made, but at the end of the day, we don't know how many were actually produced, and we don't know how many are actually surviving today. Unfortunately, with this particular device, you really can't take the handgun out of the cradle very rapidly. This would not allow for easy access to the handgun after you've supposedly ran away from whatever sentry was just confronting you. Although rather insignificant on their own accord, the stories behind the suppressors that they use and the stories behind the weapons in general is very interesting. So SOE had a branch called ISRB, which stood for Inter Service Research Bureau. In addition to ISRB, they also had another cover organization called ES6WD, and this stood for Experimental Station 6 War Department. So both of these services were sort of SOE cover-ups for the weapons purchasing powers that they used during the war. And to this end, they established a room called Room 55A in MOD offices during the war. What this room was for was that if they wanted to meet with a certain manufacturer or a certain person outside of SOE, they could meet in Room 55A without ever showing the producer that they were from SOE. The connection between these suppressors and Room 55A is that SOD did a lot of contract work with a certain John Wilkes Brothers, who was a gunmaker on 79 Beacon Street in London. And essentially, these guys were in-house armorer for SOE, and SOE would send him weapons and have him alter various small arms, and this is most likely where these suppressors came from. The John Wilkes Brothers actually lasted quite a long time, up until 2000, and SOE probably was involved with them many years after World War II as well. The other thing I'd like to point out is that SOE produced significant quantities of small arms for the resistance in Europe. Some tallies have this go over 100,000 small arms, with guns coming from all over the world, from Spain, the United Kingdom, the US, South America. Especially in the US, the British Purchasing Commission in New York was responsible for purchasing various small arms in the States and shipping them over to be sent to the resistance. To look at this in another light, we must remember that 1 in 6 of every Sten produced was sent to Europe with the resistance, and this is including Stens made for the British Army as well. The last weapon that we have to display here is a modified M1 Carbine in use by SOE during the Second World War. Its official nomenclature was Carbine S 30 caliber Mark 1/L/. It was a US supplied late war manufacturer M1 carbine that was equipped with a either Mark II or Mark VI Sten suppressor. And the operational requirement for these was something like 1,000 were needed for various SOE agents, but only around 9 were ever made. 1 is at the National Firearms Center, 3 are in the United States as a gift to the US Embassy, and the others we're not quite sure where they're at right now. You can tell it has a late war bolt by the rounded portion in it. It was made by National Postal Meter Company. And it has TN on the stock, which doesn't stand for Tennessee, but instead the Trimble and Nursery Furniture & Co. in Rochester, New York, which was a subcontractor during the Second World War to make M1 carbine stocks. As you can tell, the rear sight was modified to work with suppressed rounds at significantly different trajectories. In addition, it needed that higher sight over bore clearance to clear the suppressor. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I really appreciate the viewership. We'd really like to thank the National Firearms Center in Leeds for helping us out with this project. In addition, we'd like to thank Ventura Munitions for allowing us to film these amazing small arms in their true setting and to film it with quality equipment as well. Please keep watching the channel and watch out for the next video we have coming up. Make sure to stay safe out there.